Yes, yes, I do. I will. Yeah.
Right after.
Perfect. Perfect. Absolutely. So good afternoon. I'm not sure I'm totally cool with following the previous presentation, but this is the slot that I was giving, so that's pretty fascinating with Jerry and what's coming. So my name is James Kupernik. I'm CTO here at Dvidmob, and this session is really talking about managing the MVP in an early stage startup. So really quick background on me. I started my career in web development back in the late 90s, building e-commerce systems, content management solutions, web hosting solutions for many companies in the pushers. Leading up to my time here at Dvidmob, I was network engineer, product manager, and then ended up becoming the VP of operations and technology for a company called VoodooVox. And we actually built an ad technology that combines location data, household data, and served up banner ads through a real-time bidding network. And that really is just a fancy way of me telling you that we figured out where you lived, where you worked, and how you got in between to serve you the right ad. We focused on small businesses and delivering mobile banner ads. In between all that, I worked on a couple side projects. One of them was a mobile messaging app called Plateside, where you could message with other people using their license plate number. So you could text, somebody if they drove nicely around you or cut you off. And we actually ended up selling that product to Phone Technologies shortly after we launched. And if you remember Phone, you had the two phones, you bumped them together, and you could share your contact information or pictures. So Dvidmob. So Dvidmob, we started in 2015. Just a quick background, really before we started building the product, we saw very quickly that communication was moving from text and images to video. And we realized that this was going to create an enormous challenge for anybody who really wanted to try to create this content to run on these social platforms. And so what we built was a technology platform that connects marketers with a global network of expert animators, editors, video editors, and motion graphic designers. And as part of this talk, I'm going to just use us as an example of how we built a consumer product in less than 6 months in 2015 to now being the leading creative platform for the largest brands and agencies. We're creating video content for Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Pinterest, and Twitter. So what is the MVP? So the MVP is the minimum viable product, which is really just enough features to satisfy your early customers and also to provide the feedback loop for future product development, right? So at Dvidmob, we really fully adopted this philosophy. And I'm going to talk about how we apply the MVP process across new products and features that we work on over the last 2.5 years, and which has allowed us to move quickly from a prototype to one of Apple's best apps in 2016 to now being a creative partner for all the platforms I had previously mentioned. And also, we won an Instagram award for the work that Michael Kors did using our platform and our creator community. So why is this so important? So, as I mentioned, the MVP is really the core set of features that will allow your customer to use your product, right? And doing this is so that you can measure and determine whether what you're developing or creating has enough value that people are willing to use it and potentially buy it initially. It demonstrates that there is enough future benefit to retain those early adopters, and it provides that feedback loop to guide your future development. And so some of the things that we'll cover today talking about that is understanding your product value and how we at Dvidmob break that down, maximizing resources. So Dvidmob started out as a small company, and we are now 40 people, but we still have to maximize the resources that we have available to us. And they're always limited resources, regardless of size. And then remaining flexible to user feedback and market fit. So we started out as a consumer app, and we are now an enterprise application. So why is this particularly important in an early stage startup? So ideas are easy, and they are much harder to execute than you could imagine, right? In the beginning, everybody at Dvidmob had an idea of what the product should be, what features it should be in it, and what the audience should be for it. All of those ideas were great, and as we started to work on each individual one, they always took longer than we thought, and that's just the reality of engineering and building a product, right? until the product is in the hands of the consumer, that idea is still just an idea, right? That your idea is going to be really hard to acquire customers, to potentially raise capital, or to prove whether your idea is actually going to be relevant. It also, what's also important about defining the MVP and shipping a product is that you will have many assumptions about who's going to use your product, how they're going to use your product, and what they may do with it. And so your assumptions are going to be continually challenged, and that's why getting something out that's simple is really important. And then finally, as I mentioned, resources are absolutely always going to be limited, regardless of how much money you have or how much engineering talent you have. Right? In the previous talk, I'm sure that Microsoft, with their quantum team, is still making decisions on what they should work on versus what they shouldn't work on, because there are only so many scientists in the world that can work on these complex problems. That's no different for them than it is for an early stage startup as well. So I really like this comic because it's how I feel every time I've done a startup or worked on a problem that we have had in the company, that we have all these ideas, and if we just went forward and implemented all of them, we would end up with something that is unusable. So I really think about how we start working on new projects or new features the way I look at composition for music. As a musician, I look at everything as a blank sheet of paper, and the possibilities are limitless. If you've ever seen an orchestra score, there are just lines and lines and lines of complexity, but everything starts out with a simple melody. I just was watching Jurassic Park last night, and I'm sure you can all hear that simple melody right in your head when they first pull up with the dinosaurs, and that the violin, or I think it's the cello, is just playing that 4-note melody. That's how we approach things at Dvidmob. Find out what is that 4-note melody, where we're going to start with. This is my favorite comic. If you haven't seen it yet before, I'll give you a chance to just read through it. I'm sure it will resonate with you if you've ever dealt with defining a product, supporting a product, operating a product, building a product. You know, the Dvidmob team came from a variety of backgrounds, right? We came from tech, ad tech, game development, defense industry, the film industry. So everybody had their interpretation of what the product should do, what a feature should do, and really all we needed to do is get to build the tire swing. And so that's what really the importance of an MVP is getting to build that tire swing. So part of it, what we do is we look at the opportunity that we are trying to solve. I like to say that we don't have problems at Dvidmob, we have opportunities. And part of that is, what is that number one objective, right? And we try to really focus on each feature or product that we're launching as what is the one thing we're trying to get the user to do. And for us, when we first started the company, it was to get a user to hire a video editor. And so part of that, we were then started to define the requirements of what that means. So we knew that editors wanted to get paid, so we had to build some functionality around editors being able to define their rates that they would get paid. And for editors to do their job, they need to have assets to work with in order to take an idea and turn it into a video. So we had to build a system where users could upload media and see the rates that editors are charging and select an editor. Understanding the user perspective. I think this is something that we are getting better at spending time on doing, where are you introducing something that the user thinks they need? Do they even know they need it? Are you introducing a new behavior? Because that is going to feed into really what are the requirements that you really need to build into your MVP. So for us, we were introducing this concept of you have a lot of these unused assets on your mobile phone, and you can turn them into a nicely edited video. Is that something that our consumers were ever really thinking about that they need? The answer we came up with was with no, and that ended up being true. But part of that, it allowed us to refine the requirements of what it meant to create a project, right? So if you didn't know you needed to create this video, did you know what motion graphics was? Do you know what title design is? Do you know what audio design is? Probably not. So those are things that may be important to our editor community, but it's not something that we would solve for within the users that we're going to build these projects to find the right editor. So once you've kind of gone through that process, you've defined your core requirements, and you have a game plan, start building and build for feedback. So this is one of my favorite quotes. I'll let you read it. But if you're building version 1, version 0.1, version 0.0.1, whatever you call it, it shouldn't be perfect. You should be hesitant to ship it out, but it should try to achieve your objective. You know, an example right now, we have this prototype of this data product we've been building around computer vision, tagging videos, overlaying performance data, and one of our engineers did the design work. An engineer doing design work has the output that you would expect, but it solved the problem we're trying to solve. And we demoed this last week to the team at Amazon, and they were completely floored by it. We had our objective, and we built a solution for that, and we captured the audience that we were trying to capture. And that's what we mean by MVP. So, you know, building this functional prototype, you know, the wireframes and mockups are very nice, but until you start interacting with something, it's really hard to tell how that is going to feel in the hands of the user. And so when you build a prototype, it helps you confirm your assumptions or challenge your assumptions. So this is particularly useful in UX type situations where you may have a workflow that a user has to go through. You may think that, you know, going from point A to point B to point C is very logical and makes sense the way you have it laid out in the wireframes, but when you actually go to use it on a mobile phone or using a mouse, you know, you're going to find that some of those assumptions don't make sense, right? So it really helps us to surface new questions as well. So as you start to use something, things that you just assumed would be simple may become more complex, and it allows you to incorporate that into your kind of internal feedback loop to really reduce complexity even further. Right, so what is the right prototype solution? It really depends on what you are doing. So at Dvidmob, we are constantly iterating on a lot of different ideas. If it's a UI idea, we're gonna use something like InVision or Fluid.io or Prototype. We particularly use InVision on a regular basis. If it is something that's more technical, we will have one of the engineers start writing some code and just sub out a very simple HTML interface as necessary. If it's something a little bit more abstract, we may just build the base framework, the APIs around it, and just do some internal testing with API testing tools. But it's really starting simple. One of my favorite examples of what a right prototype solution is the Dropbox example. Anybody familiar with what Dropbox did before they launched? So before they even wrote a single line of code, they had this great idea that you could sync your files across any device that you had and store them in the cloud. But there was a lot of technical challenges that they hadn't solved yet to actually launch a product. So they created a 3-minute video which showed that whole process very nicely laid out. And after they launched that video, their signups went from 5,000 to 75,000 overnight. They, through that prototype, you know, proved that their product had a market fit and it was something that people wanted. And that's really what we're trying to do here with building a functional prototype. Side note to that, if you're starting a business or creating a new product, creating a new feature, if you listen to that Dropbox example, obviously video is important. Dvidmob can help you create that product video. And finally, building a functional prototype can help limit scope creep, right? So if you've ever been in planning meetings or idea meetings, or you're starting to work on a problem, you get a lot of what ifs, right? And that particularly comes from the high level, more the high level, right? As a CTO, I can be a what if guy as well, right? And that's really tough for engineers. Our CEO and founder, if he was there, I would say the same thing. He is notorious for saying, well, what if we just did this, right? And so, but by building a functional prototype, we can say, sure, that sounds like a great idea, but let's let you use this first, and then let's see if that what if still makes sense. And so the prototyping really allows us to move quickly, log good ideas, and do them in the next iteration. This is by far my absolute favorite if. Right? So no matter how simple you think you make your application, the first time you get it in the hands of users and you watch them use it, this is what you're going to feel like. And when we launched our mobile app, the first version, and I watched people use it, I just shook my head. And we found this GIF, and this was like kind of something that went around the office for the first 6 months. because we felt that it was simple, but every user was very confused, right? And what was the problem? We were way too close to the product, and we built it so we understood how to get from point A to point B, right? So what we really learned is that it is important to seek out honest feedback as part of this MVP process, right? Family and friends are great people, but they support you and they're really bad at hurting your feelings. So it was really important for us to go out to our advisors, our investors, and our future customers and give them that app that we were uncomfortable with. And that provided us with the valuable feedback that we then took back to improve our app before we distributed it to a larger audience. You know, we did welcome those constructive criticisms. You know, we have to have a thick skin. And as one of the original team members, it was really hard after you spent 3 months, you know, building up the platform and getting that first prototype out there to hear that people were struggling with how to send the project to bid. But it was important to us because it really improved our application in the end. With that being said, you know, some of the people that we went out to collect feedback from could also felt challenged by what we were doing, right? Whether we were threatening their line of industry or their line of work. And their feedback was more cynical than it was constructive. And so you have to have a filter on who your audience is, how this may impact their lives if this becomes a popular application or product. And again, it's looking through the lens of the user that's using your product. So with all of that, how do you kind of do all these things and do them with a limited resource set, right? So Dvidmob, as I mentioned, we started out with 3 engineers. We were a seed funded company. But today we have 10 engineers that are in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, and we are a well-funded growth company. We closed our Series A this summer. We just closed an extended Series A on Friday, and we are growing. We still have limited resources. There's still 10 engineers. We now have a growing sales team who are putting more pressures on the product team to build more features and functionality that clients are asking for. So I'll talk about some of the ways that we continue to maximize our resources to manage complexity in delivering the products that our clients are asking for. I didn't look apparently that Jerry was from Microsoft, so this is just luck. But I thought this quote was resonated with the team and myself well, is that really complexity really is difficult for your engineering team. And you know, we've created a culture that understands the challenges and pitfalls that come with complexity. Because of that, our engineers generally, and there's some that are here, feel comfortable that the work that they're doing is able to be completed in a short amount of time and will ultimately drive value for our company. And that's really what we're trying to do, because we want to iterate quickly, we want to move quickly, but we want our engineers to make sure that they're not being overworked and taxed all the time, so that they're really creating software and products that are built as best as they can be. So one of the ways that we did this, and one of my big recommendations, is adopt a methodology early, like even just loosely. When it was just 3 of us, we adopted Agile, and it was extremely loose, but it was something that really helped us ship faster. So if you're not familiar with the Agile methodology, you typically work in sprints, and sprints are length of time. Our sprints are 2 weeks, and that's kind of a typical Agile sprint lifespan. And because of this, the work that we define and the work that gets assigned to developers is expected to be done in that short time. And if you've never been part of a sprint planning session, all the engineers get in a room, look at the list of backlogs, they all vote on how long each task is going to take. We know that each engineer can comfortably accomplish 15 points in every sprint, and then we assign tasks to all the engineers. So everybody has weighed in on the amount of time each task is going to take. Everybody knows that within 2 weeks, all these tasks should be complete. And we now have functional products or features that we can ship into the hands of potential customers, or at least for internal testing. You know, because of this, because the span is so short, we're reducing the complexity, right? And even out of sprint planning, things that seem simple as you start to dig into them, our engineers will find that there are unanswered questions that that have increased the complexity of the task that we originally planned. So we have daily stand-ups, and that's where those issues get raised. And we almost always find ways to reduce that complexity. So if a feature, which we thought was going to take 3 days to build, but there was this unforeseen refactoring that needed to be done, and it could be done in that time. If we remove this, we would probably remove something that is less valuable to us in order to make it simple to still meet our deadlines. And that's really important. In Dvidmob, everybody expects that every 2 weeks we have a launch ready with code that's shippable. And that has made us very consistent and reliable both to our partners and customers, and also internally to the rest of the team. Sales, marketing, they know what to expect every 2 weeks from the engineering team. And then also, you know, as I mentioned before, this really just helps manage scope creep, right? So because the development cycle is short, those what if we did this thing, those tend to get less and less as the stakeholders in your company start to get used to having something in their hands every 2 weeks, right? It may not have all the bells and whistles, but you're getting feedback faster and you're iterating over improvements of that product at a much quicker pace than if you tried to build everything over a longer time period. So how do we keep simplifying? You know, the engineers are by far the best people in our company to let us know when something is too complex. One of our engineers, our iOS developer, he is never shy to let us know when something we're presenting to him seems complex on paper. His best saying is that if it looks complex on paper, then it's going to be impossible to program. And so every time we give him something that seems complex to him, he will let us know. Great engineering teams can make things seem effortless. And I would say I have the best engineering team that works at Dvidmob. But because of that, sometimes it's easy to drive complexity and unrealistic demands on them, right? If they make things look so easy, you know, we can then just pile more and more work on them, even though they may be sleeping at the office overnight to get that job done. So it's being very aware of that. The best products and features we built is when we involve the engineers early in the ideation process. Let them be involved and tell you if what you're thinking is going to be too complex to build in a reasonable time frame. You know, as engineers, if there's any engineers in this room, you need to be proactive about raising those ideas of complexity, right? Because if you don't, you're basically remaining silent is saying, yes, I can do that, but it probably is going to produce long hours and miss deadlines and code that you're not as comfortable shipping into production. So how else do we manage our limited resources? If anybody was at Joe Monti's talk about where to start a project and starting a new project, he had this question of how much time do you have? You have no time, right? Especially in an early stage startup, no matter how good your idea is, you know, there are probably 10 other people that have the same idea that either are not working on it yet, or once they see somebody else working on it, will start working on it. So moving as quickly as possible is really important. And using the cloud can really help you do this, right? Things like data storage, file storage, networking, server deployment, you know, all these things have been solved already by people, and they've created services around them, right? Spend the time that you have building the products and features the best that you can, right? Cloud resources at this point are so cheap, and in many cases they're free. Amazon has a free tier for almost all of its services, and you can get up and running without spending a dime. From day one, we've committed to using Amazon. Like, we run 100% of our platform and all our products on Amazon. We utilize over 20 of their services, from deploying our services, database, storage, networking. We use their recognition services for doing a lot of video tagging we're doing. We use their queuing systems for queuing messages for our media processing. We didn't have to build all those pipelines, fire hoses, data processing systems to get our product going. We were able to spend time building a product that our customers wanted and shipping them out, right? And finally, everything's about remaining flexible. When we started, our idea was that people had cameras in their pockets on a cell phone, and they had underutilized content. We really believe that consumers are going to want to take that content, hire a video editor, and turn it into magical vacation videos, right? That although we proved our model using that path, we found that the consumer market did not give us the growth that we wanted. And as more businesses started to use our mobile app, we really discovered that they were willing to spend more. They were creating more videos on a regular basis, and that was the market that we had to go to. So because we started with an MVP and we built the building blocks of what Dvidmob could be, we were able to transition from a consumer mobile app to an enterprise product today. Part of that, was we had the influence from the platform. So as we moved into the business and enterprise space, we started working with Facebook and Snapchat and Twitter and Pinterest to solve their problems. They have major video production problems for their platforms and for their clients, right? So if you think back even a couple years ago, all video content was horizontal, right? Snapchat came along, and now horizontal content is now vertical content. Well, if you're an ad agency and you just spent $10 million on a Super Bowl ad that you want to run to a younger audience on Snapchat, what are you going to do, right? Agencies were taking a long time to reproduce that content into vertical content, and we saw an opportunity there to help those agencies solve that problem. The first version of our Project Create Flow was freeform. I created a project, I needed a vacation video, or I needed an app. And there was really no specs that you could fill out. And then you sent it off to your editor, and then you told them what you needed. As part of our drive to remain flexible, as we started doing more work for the platforms, we introduced the idea to select which formats that you want to create for each platform that you're creating content for. And again, that did not take us 6 months to do. We built the framework because we had an MVP solution, and it took us just a matter of weeks to introduce these new concepts. And then really being diligent about reducing this complexity is, again, going back to that the building blocks for Dvidmob has allowed us to move quickly and respond to changes required to grow our business. So there's two ways that we kind of do this. Is managing technical debt. And for engineers, this is a touchy subject when I was talking about this with my team, because technical debt is always going to happen. As the CTO, I like to stand there and say we should not have any technical debt, but we should also move as quickly as possible. So a couple of ways that we handle this is we try to continually build a culture within the engineering team to not over-engineer. So what does that mean, right? It really means stay the course. Engineers are really good at figuring out when they're implementing a feature, like, well, what if somebody tries to do this, right? I need to handle that. And that is what we mean by don't over-engineer. Like, we want to stay the course. If you have a good idea about how a feature could be improved or used in the future, we typically say, let's log that idea and let's move on. If it's a really good one, we'll do it in the next iteration. But this really helps to reduce engineer scope creep and keep everybody on track within each sprint, right? But with that being said, do engineer for the future. This is going back to involving engineers in the ideation process. Context is important throughout the entire company. It's equally important to the engineers, whether you're talking about marketing, whether you're talking about sales. Engineers, if they know where things are going, and as they implement features, they can build their code around the idea that something could interact with it that's different in the future, which allows your code base to remain flexible and really helps to keep you to be nimble and really creates but less complex code that is adjustable in the future as the business changes. We have weekly calls with the entire company that the engineering team, sales team, marketing team are all involved in, so that marketing and sales understands what engineering is doing and vice versa. And it has really created a great culture within the company that we can all be forward thinking while shipping things very quickly. And then finally, as part of managing technical debt, we've created a culture that, you have to leave it better than you found it, right? So as you move quickly, you're going to implement solutions that may not be as elegant as you want them to be. So you or somebody on your team is going to go back there and maybe use that solution or expand upon it for a new feature. And part of what we have built into our philosophy is if you're working on something, build in time to refactor it slightly, to leave it better than you found it. The caveat there is if it's 11:30 on a Friday and you promised the investors that you were going to ship something, sometimes you just have to do a workaround. But otherwise, we like to leave things better than we found it. And then finally, this is one of my favorite scenes from Friends, if you're a Friends fan, but you really need to embrace change, right? As one of the first employees of Dvidmob, I was really gung-ho about this consumer app. I had come from ad tech, which just beat me down. And I was ready to just build an application for consumers and not deal with advertisers and the whole 9 yards. But the reality is that the market was dictating something differently. And so we really had to listen to our users, whether it was our initial consumer users on how we changed our mobile app or listening to our enterprise users today. It's embracing what they are telling us and telling us what they need to do their jobs, and we have to follow that lead, right? And this is going back to being honest about the market opportunity. I may not want to be I didn't come to Dvidmob to create all the world's social content ads, but we're still employing hundreds and thousands of editors through our platform, which was the vision. And we're helping to create better human-curated content across the social platforms. And so we were able to change and do that. And this is all about reacting quickly, but thoughtfully, right? You're going to have tons of feedback and ideas coming. You still have to have your vision of where your company and product should be going. For us, it is all about the power of human creativity and really trying to employ 1 million editors within our platform. So all our changes and all the things that we introduced in our platform really are still guiding towards those two ideas. So thank you for joining me for this talk. We are hiring. We're trying to double our team this year. So we're looking to add 10 more people between now and the end of the year. So if you are at all interested or nobody that's interested, please stop by our table or reach out to us. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them now. Anyone?
Sure. So when you talked about technical debt, it seemed like a lot of the focus was around avoiding technical debt at all, and then paying it down incrementally. How do you deal with the situations where it's like something big, like say Amazon offers a new service that does something that you implement yourself, and you have to spend 4 weeks migrating to their service so you can delete a bunch of your code?
Mm-hmm.
How do you balance like arguing that to stakeholders that don't really see any new features, or like you can't really argue efficiency except just that like it's going to make engineers' lives better? Like how can you champion that to people who like it doesn't really directly affect?
Yes, that's a great question. So in Dvidmob, we're lucky that our founders have a engineering background. So those conversations are pretty easy to say that there is this large code base that could potentially go away and can be supplemented by a managed service that we don't necessarily have to deal with. When you don't have an audience that is so understanding, one of the things that is a great takeaway or a key point in reducing or removing code is it removes the possibilities for instability or bugs in your platform. And as soon as people hear that there's the potential for less bugs or less issues, they're pretty much sold on investing in that as long as it's not a huge task. So those are kind of some of the techniques that I would use to kind of sell reducing technical debt.
Cool. Thank you. More question about Dvidmob. How did you get the editors in place first before you got the customer? Like how did that work?
We did. So we built out our edit suite platform, and we launched that first within actually 3 months from when we started. And we did a recruiting campaign to onboard, at that time it was 3,000 editors into our platform, and train them up on how jobs were going to be created and purchased through our platform and how they would get paid. And that was a 3-month lead in before we launched our application.
Can you share some thoughts about what kind of principles or strategy you use in prioritizing features?
Sure.
Especially when they're big.
Yes.
For the little ones, okay, figure it out. But it's like a big one, like this guy just mentioned, like swapping a significant component, which could take some serious man hours, or introducing a significant workflow, something along those lines? How do you prioritize?
So we will look at it really in two ways. Will it create an immediate financial reward through more people transacting through our platform, or will it be a multiplier on the valuation of the company? An example of that is that if Snapchat uses our platform heavily for creating their content for their advertisers, and they're doing a lot of projects, and they have their own project management, tracking systems that they're using, and that for them to use that and then try to use our platform, they're asking us to try to automate that process a little bit, right? And if we can make their job easier for creating these projects on our platform, that just means more transactional revenue for us. So that is an easy way to prioritize. On the flip side, we're building out this new data product, which is all these media assets that are coming to our platform. We're using computer vision to tag them, to identify the objects, the people, the emotions, the sentiment within the videos. We're ingesting performance data from the ad networks and overlaying that over those tags so that we create this creative agile suite, which allows marketers or the creators to see what types of things are driving performance within video content. That has no monetary value immediately, right? We're prototyping it out, but that is one of those things that for our company, and data and computer vision and machine learning are all things that are multipliers on the value of our company. So that's how we kind of prioritize that.
So sort of like IP or revenue.
Correct.
Obvious revenues or implicit IP.
Mm-hmm. And those are really I would say the two main ways that we measure how we prioritize things. But then obviously if things are causing critical usage flow, pain points, those will get prioritized pretty much above everything.
Sure.
There's another question.
Yeah, I have a question about, you're talking about over-engineering versus planning for the future, which is sort of a constant, we hear there are heroes who, it's like, oh, the product manager didn't specify this, but we did it anyway. That hero, that person's a hero. And then we also hear, hey, my colleague is spending all this time on something that's worthless for over-engineering. And you said one of the ways that you prevent that or mitigate that is involving the engineers with product. I'm just wondering how that actually occurs. Is there a roadmap? Does it happen at sprint planning? Are the PMs and the daily stand-ups in some kind of shared direction? How does your design and product team share and sort of lay out the general direction with the engineers to the point where the engineers get that sense of planning for the future versus over-engineering?
Sure. So when a new feature or product gets introduced, or an idea comes up, typically what we do is, and usually we don't have a product manager or a project manager at this point. I kind of act as that, but we create a very high-level functional kind of requirements document, which is a bunch of user stories. So if you're familiar with Agile at all, you create a bunch of user stories. Like a user should accept a bid is an example of a user story. So we'll create, typically will create those user stories as part of whatever is going to go into this feature. And then the engineers that it may touch or the UX designers that it may touch will all get in a room, review it. Does this kind of make sense to everybody? And then from there, the designers will go out and sub out the wireframes. We'll actually regroup as a team, even for 15 minutes, to say, okay, this is the general direction. Does it still make sense? And then if, from a UI standpoint, the UX, UI folks will go out, do the build out, build the prototype in Envision, and then we'll come back and walk the engineers through it. And then at that point, the engineers are very quick to say, well, you introduced a piece of data there that we don't have. So is that something we need to be thinking about, or is that something that is not necessary? And that's how we kind of reduce the complexity. And all those things seem like a lot, but they really end up being short meetings. And I would say we may meet for 2 to 3 hours collectively before we start to write code to kind of simplify that process to try to reduce reduce the ability for engineers to over-engineer a problem. Yes?
Yeah, how do you help define what's minimal about the MVP? What's an MVP technically is different than what's MVP for a marketable product. So where can you find that kind of middle ground so you're not over-engineering at the initial, but then you have something that is consumer ready to start gaining?
Right. So I think it depends on the where you are at in the lifespan of your company. So when we really first started, the first MVP shippable product, even from the UI standpoint, was very simple, and it was an iOS app, but we used all the native iOS fields and features in order to get from point A to point B. And that was okay because we had investors who understood that we were working through the beginnings of this platform. Our early customers that we knew we could test this with were sympathetic to the fact that we're introducing something new into the space. But as we start to, later in the company, as we start to introduce new features into an established product, the way we do that is really fundamentally look at what are the changes we're making to how users experience our product today. And we try to limit those changes to very singular changes. So if we're introducing, one of the things we introduced was a way for you to manage the assets that are within your business account, so that all your users can share those same assets amongst any projects that are creating. So things like logos, creative briefs, fonts, etc. But that process, there's a lot of ideas on how we should have implemented that process. Like we should pre-populate that with all the folders that a client will need. We should allow anybody to manage it, but what we really whittle down to is that our users know how to upload media to their projects today. They know how to create folders within their projects. And so the MVP for us was this new functionality, was just going to mirror the usage that our clients already were doing, but it was just a new way to store files within our product. And now that they're using it, we're getting that feedback to what's important to them within their asset locker, which may be different than their project media. So now we'll iterate on both the UX and the backend to improve that feature as we collect that feedback. I don't know if that helps answer your question.
Yeah, that's
Anything else? No. Well, thank you very much. And hopefully we'll see you at the after party. Dvidmob team will be there wearing our gray little hoodies. So we'd love to say hi if you'd like to hear more about Dvidmob or any of the positions. Thank you, everybody.